Welcome to Discography Battle. I am Saz. Step into my office. Now, in the last round, we did Coldplay versus Radiohead, an age-old debate between music fans, and so I wanted to go for something sort of equal to that this time. Two artists that go back just as far. People have been debating for just as long. So we are doing Kanye West versus Blur this time. Of course, everybody knows about the controversy between Kanye West and Blur ever since Damon Albarn wrote Black Skinhead and Kanye didn't give him credit on Yeezus. So we got to settle it once and for all here. Let's go. So if you don't know the rules of Discography Battle, I'd pit one album from each artist up against each other based on categories where they share a common interest, but only one album can win each category, and the artist with the most number of points at the end of the Discography Battle wins a spin in the magic whip and a kiss on the lips. Let's go. So as always, starting off with the debut. Kanye's debut is The College Dropout, iconic, legendary album, and Blur's debut album is Leisure. The Leisure is Blur's debut. That's the first album they wrote. That is moving from there to the most recent. Kanye's most recent album is, I guess, Donda 2. Like, does that count as his most recent? He technically put it out, but it wasn't finished, and he never put it anywhere but on the little box thing. Blur's most recent album was The Ballad of Darren, which actually came out on a reasonable format. And I guess I probably already spoiled sort of my feelings on this based on the way I just said it. But yeah, I mean, Donda 2, it's not finished. It's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say about that. What is that album? The Ballad of Darren is great, by the way. If you haven't heard Blur's most recent album, I was surprised that in 2023 they're still putting out stuff like that. It seems like people are a little in the middle of the road about it, but one of my favorite albums of the year. Okay, here's where just let me level with you guys a little bit before we go any deeper into the Discography Battle. People on the internet really like Kanye West, and to a concerning degree. I like Kanye. I think he's innovative. I think he's done a lot of great stuff for music. I'm not defending his recent stuff, his shenanigans, but that's the thing. But people, it's like, he says Nazi, and people say how high. It's scary how much people like Kanye West. And I just don't see that level of ride or die coming for Blur anywhere on the internet. I mean, people like Gorillaz, but I don't know if Damon Albarn has shooters like Kanye West has shooters, and that concerns me about Blur taking too many points in this kind of a battle, which is why, I mean, it really just breaks my heart to say that in the smash hit category, Blur's self-titled beats Late Registration by Kanye West. I'm sorry, it's not me that decides this stuff. It's actually a council of elves, and none of you know where I live, so I feel pretty confident saying that, and that there won't be any retribution. And Livy Dune, Baby Gronk, Rizzed Up. So I'm gonna go real tongue-in-cheek here and say the next category is the controversial one, which for Kanye, it's gotta be Yeezus, and for Blur, I would say it's Think Tank. And I used to have a Think Tank CD when I was a kid, and I remember liking it back then. But have any of you guys listened to that album recently? Because it's not good. And Yeezus needs its flowers. Even if you don't like Yeezus, you got to praise that it really was, I mean, it might be one of Kanye's most forward-thinking albums in terms of like where music went after that album came out and how like prescient it was about what's happened since then. Yeezus was on the cutting edge, so it wins this easily, and I hope that redeems me in the eyes of the Late Registration fans. So I got to introduce a special category just for this Discography Battle. That's the one that took forever to come out, and for Kanye, that's The Life of Pablo. Everybody remembers that way, and for Blur, it's The Magic Whip. Admittedly, Magic Whip took a lot longer to come out than The Life of Pablo, and I tend to think that Kanye and Cardi fans are kind of little babies when they complain about an album taking like a few years to come out. I can see how if you're like 12, you know, a few years is like a quarter of your life, so I get why that's like stressful then, but for the rest of us, it's not really that long. Pretty normal wait time for an album, honestly. With all that said, The Life of Pablo has to win this. There was a magical experience when that album came out. There's like a vibe around that release that's weirdly unmatched by anything else. The Magic Whip, great Blur album. I like it. It showed that they still have stuff all this time later, but I gotta give it to The Life of Pablo. Next category is the low-key favorite. For Kanye West, that is absolutely My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and for Blur, that would be Park Life. Now, this is a category that could probably pretty easily start like the Revolutionary War up again. Americans would almost like unanimously pick My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and I feel like British people would almost unanimously pick Park Life. That's like a legendary album over there. I'm sort of torn, right? Because I am American on the one hand, and I do love pissing off British people, but simultaneously, I don't live in America anymore, so again, I don't have to be afraid of any of you. None of you know where I live. I can face no retribution for this. Park Life can just win, and you all have to deal with it. The underrated one, for Kanye, I had to put Ye here. I feel like, I honestly have mixed thoughts about Ye nowadays, but it definitely like didn't sell very well. It doesn't seem like it rates very high on people's catalogs, and there's some really good songs on there, so I'll put it here. And then for Blur, I put Modern Life is Rubbish. Again, I feel like that one pretty well rated generally, but as far as like their like classic 90s Britpop albums goes, it seems like it tends to rate lower than other ones that have already been mentioned on here. So that's what's going into this. And honestly, I feel like I like both of these albums a lot. I really couldn't, like, comparing them feels like comparing apples to oranges. I felt weird even comparing these two albums. It's like, what am I doing here? What is the point of all this? The answer is there is no point to anything. And I'm going to do draw. The experimental one. So for Kanye, again, sort of like I said in the Radiohead one, you could put a lot of Kanye ones under the experimental category, but I'm going to do 808s and Heartbreaks because that was like his first real diverging from his sound and like creating something totally new and wild. Blur, I put 13 in here. I think most people would agree with that. But 13 is a pretty weird psychedelic Blur album. If I'm being honest though, 13 doesn't rate high on my Blur discography. I'm pissing off every fan base in this video. There's just nothing. I know we're just going to be safe after this, but yeah, it's got to be 808s and Heartbreaks. We are down to the last category, and Kanye's currently winning. Just so we're all clear on that. Kanye's got 4, Blur's got 3. Put down your pitchforks, Kanye fans. Put down your torches, but maybe not for too long because we're on the last category. The last category is the hit parade. The hit parade is for albums that aren't quite the smash hit. They aren't quite their best-selling album from either of these artists, but both the albums are full of hit songs. Like, there's a ton of iconic songs, radio songs on both these albums. For Kanye, that's Graduation. For Blur, that's The Great Escape. Now, I know what you all may be wondering. What happens in the case of a tie? What do we do? Is there a tiebreaker? And we are going to cross that bridge when we get there, okay? And we're there because The Great Escape easily beats Graduation. And what you got to do in the case of a tie is delete both artists from your iPod Touch. They both suck now. We're never going to listen to any of them either again.